Motorcycle that invented the word superbike. It made British and American machines look ancient overnight. And yet, when Honda built it, they were so unsure it would sell, they hedged their bets in a way that seems unthinkable today. The proof is hidden in the engine cases. The first bikes had a rough, grainy finish because Honda deliberately used a cheap, low-volume casting method. They were quietly preparing for the possibility that this bike might flop. To understand why Honda almost gave up, you have to picture 1968. Big motorcycles meant British twins and American V-twins. Japan built small, sensible commuter bikes. Nobody expected that to change. And Honda was struggling. Their flagship, the CB450 twin, wasn't selling the way they'd hoped. In America, sales had been sluggish since 1966. Honda needed something big. This is the story of how a struggling company, full of doubt, gambled on the most ambitious motorcycle it had ever attempted, and accidentally changed the entire industry forever. Honda's reputation was built on two things: bulletproof small bikes and stunning Grand Prix success. Through the mid-60s, they'd won 5 straight world championships with tiny, high-revving multi-cylinder engines. Then, in 1966, Honda announced it would withdraw from Grand Prix racing. All that racing knowledge, all those engineers, they needed a new mission. That mission became high-performance road bikes. Soichiro Honda, the founder, had an ambition. He wanted to build what he called a king of motorcycles, a machine to conquer the Western markets that Honda had never truly cracked. The turning point, Honda later said, came in a park in Switzerland. He watched a large policeman climb off what looked like a small motorcycle. To his surprise, it was a 750 cubic centimeter Triumph. The bike only looked small because the rider was so big. And it hit him. Honda's machines, built to Japanese proportions, would never sell abroad. They needed to think bigger, much bigger. Meanwhile, in America, a service manager named Bob Hansen flew to Japan. He'd managed Honda's race team, and he had strong opinions about what America actually wanted from a big Honda. When the possibility of a new big bike came up, Hansen was blunt. Honda was rumored to be considering a twin. He reportedly said it better not be a twin, it should be a 4. A 4-cylinder road bike. In 1968, that was almost unheard of. Transverse 4s existed only as exotic Italian racers or rare, hugely expensive machines. For an everyday motorcycle, it was radical. There was urgency, too. Word reached Honda that Triumph and BSA were developing a 750 cubic centimeter 3-cylinder machine. If Honda was going to leap ahead, 4 cylinders would beat 3. The decision crystallized. In February 1968, the project became official. Soichiro Honda handed it to engineer Yoshito Harada, who assembled a design team of around 20 people. The goal was staggeringly ambitious. They set a hard target. The biggest Harley made around 66 horsepower. So the new Honda 4 had to make at least 67. It had to outmuscle the icons of American motorcycling. What they created was a 736 cubic centimeter single overhead cam inline 4, mounted transversely across the frame. Smooth, powerful, and reliable in a way big bikes of the era simply were not. 4 cylinders meant 4 exhaust pipes, 4 chrome mufflers. It was a visual statement no other affordable bike could match. You saw a CB750 and you understood immediately, this was different. But the engine was only half the revolution. Harada's team also wanted a front disc brake, cutting-edge technology, almost never seen on a production motorcycle. And here, doubt crept in. Harada couldn't decide. The disc brake was new and needed more testing. If they committed to it, they might miss their launch deadline. So he took the problem straight to Soichiro Honda himself. He laid out both options: safe drum brakes, and they'd make the deadline, or risky disc brakes, and they might not. Honda's reply was instant and decisive. Well, of course we'll have to go with disc brakes. They didn't stop there. Electric start, when most big bikes still demanded a hefty kick. A 5-speed gearbox. This was to be a big motorcycle anyone could ride and start easily. On the 28th of October, 1968, at the Tokyo Motor Show, Honda unveiled it. The CB750 turned silently on a floodlit plinth, its engine displayed proudly alongside. The crowd was stunned. Here was a Japanese company, from a country not yet associated with premium engineering, outclassing the British and Americans on power, technology, and sophistication. It shouldn't have been possible. In late 1968, Soichiro Honda sent a hand-built prototype across the Pacific to Bob Hansen, the very first CB750 to reach American soil, months before the official dealer bikes arrived. Then came the moment that mattered most. January 1969, Las Vegas, Honda's American Dealer Convention. Sales had been slow, and American Honda needed this bike to turn everything around. Soichiro Honda himself flew in. When the CB750 was revealed, the room understood something historic was happening. But it was the next announcement that truly detonated: the price. American Honda's president announced $1,495. Comparable big bikes sold for anywhere between $2,800 and $4,000. Honda had undercut them all, massively. Think about that. More power than a Harley. Technology no rival could match. A front disc brake, electric start, 4 cylinders. And it cost roughly half the price. It seemed too good to be true. And here is the heart of our story. Despite all this, Honda was not confident. Internally, they genuinely didn't know if this strange, complex 4-cylinder machine would actually sell in numbers. So they hedged. Instead of investing in expensive, high-volume die-cast tooling for the engine cases, Honda used sandcasting. Cheaper to set up, slower. Perfect if you only expect to build a few. Sandcasting left that distinctive, rough, grainy finish on the cases. It was a deliberate choice, a financial safety net. Honda's own production forecast tells you exactly how nervous they were. Their initial plan called for just 1,500 CB750s per year. 1,500. For a motorcycle that would come to define an entire decade, that is an astonishingly cautious number. Honda built the engine assembly line in Saitama, with the rolling chassis assembled in Hamamatsu. On the 15th of March, 1969, the first true production CB750 rolled off the line. The early days were slow. At first, they were lucky to crate 5 bikes a day. The cautious plan seemed to fit the cautious pace. And then the orders started to arrive. Not a trickle, a flood. Dealers couldn't get enough. Customers who'd only ever dreamed of a 4-cylinder machine were suddenly able to afford one. The demand was completely unlike anything Honda had modeled. Honda scrambled. That forecast of 1,500 a year? Within months, it became 1,500 a month. Then the targets climbed again, toward 3,000 a month. They had wildly underestimated their own creation. Now Honda knew it had a winner. The financial caution evaporated. They invested in the expensive pressured die-cast molds they'd been too nervous to commit to at the start. After roughly 7,400 motorcycles, the last Sandcast engine left the factory. Everything after switched to smooth, mass-produced die-cast cases. The gamble was officially over. Honda had won. The motorcycle press struggled to categorize it. It was faster, better braked, and more sophisticated than anything at the price. So they invented a word for it. They called it a superbike. The performance backed up the hype, around 68 horsepower and a top speed near 125 miles per hour. Genuine superbike numbers from a bike ordinary people could actually buy. But raw speed wasn't the real magic. The CB750 was smooth. It didn't leak oil, the electrics worked, and it started at the push of a button. It was a big bike you could simply rely on. For riders used to British and American machines that vibrated, leaked, and needed constant attention, the Honda felt like it came from the future. Reliability alone was a revolution. It proved itself on the track too. A racing version, the CR750, showed the design's potential. In 1970, A CB750-based machine won the Daytona 200, cementing its performance credibility. The impact was seismic. Within a few years, Kawasaki, Suzuki, and Yamaha all rushed out their own four-cylinder machines. The CB750 had created an entire template the industry would follow for decades. That template even got a name: the Universal Japanese Motorcycle. Air-cooled, transverse 4, standard riding position. For 20 years, it defined what a motorcycle was supposed to be. The CB750 started it all. For the British industry, it was a death sentence. Triumph, BSA, Norton, they simply could not answer the CB750 on technology, reliability, or price. Within a decade, most of them were gone. And the sales? Honda ultimately built around 445,000 of these first-generation single-cam CB750s. From a company that once planned for 1,500 a year, the scale of the misjudgment is staggering. Which brings us back to those rough Sandcast engines. That cautious, cost-saving hedge, born of doubt, accidentally created the most collectible CB750s of all. Nervousness, preserved in aluminum. Today, a Sandcast CB750 can be worth tens of thousands of dollars more than an identical die-cast one. It rides no differently, but it carries the story of the moment Honda wasn't sure. Collectors pay a premium not for performance, but for history. That grainy surface is physical evidence of a company hedging against failure, right before it built one of the greatest successes in motorcycling. Even that first prototype sent to Bob Hansen survives. Unique details. Honda cast into the valve cover instead of the production text. It later sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars, the very first of its kind. The red and gold livery became legendary. That silhouette, four pipes, that broad engine, that stance, is now one of the most recognizable shapes in all of motorcycling history. People who saw one in 1970 never forgot it. The sound of four cylinders, the size, the four chrome pipes. For a generation of riders, it was love at first sight. What made it truly special wasn't just being first. It was that Honda got it right. Powerful, affordable, reliable, and beautiful, all at once. A near impossible combination, delivered on the first attempt. The CB750 name endured for decades, through single-cam and twin-cam generations, right into the 2000s. Few motorcycles have ever had such a long, influential life, and it so nearly didn't happen. Ask yourself what would have happened if that Switzerland moment hadn't struck, if Bob Hansen hadn't pushed for four cylinders, if Honda had stuck with a safe, cautious twin. The industry would look completely different. Every instinct at a struggling company points toward caution, toward the safe bet. Honda's genius wasn't just the engineering, it was choosing the bold path while quietly, nervously, preparing for the possibility of failure. Of course we'll have to go with disc brakes. That one decision captures it. Faced with the safe choice or the ambitious one, Honda chose ambition, even when they weren't sure the gamble would pay off. The result reshaped motorcycling permanently. Japanese dominance, the Superbike category, the death of the old British industry, all of it traces back to this one nervous, brilliant gamble. So when you see one of those rough-cast early engines behind museum glass, remember what it represents. Not confidence, doubt. The physical trace of a company that almost didn't believe in its own masterpiece. Honda didn't almost give up because the bike was bad. They almost gave up because it was so far ahead of its time that even they couldn't quite believe the market was ready for it. The market wasn't just ready, it had been waiting, without knowing it, for exactly this machine. A big, fast, sophisticated motorcycle that ordinary people could actually own and trust. Every modern superbike owes something to this moment. The formula Honda gambled on in 1969, 4 cylinders, real power, real brakes, real reliability, became the foundation of the sport we know today. It's easy now to call the CB750 an obvious success, but in 1968, inside Honda, it was anything but obvious. It was a leap into the dark by a company that badly needed a win. That's what makes the story so remarkable. The bike that projected total confidence was, behind the scenes, a nervous gamble hedged with cheap tooling and modest forecasts. Boldness and doubt, side by side. 4 pipes, 4 cylinders, 1 disc brake, 1 button to start it. Simple ingredients combined at exactly the right moment that quietly ended one era of motorcycling and began another. The Honda CB750 didn't just succeed, it rewrote the rules of what a motorcycle could be, who could own one, and which country would lead the industry for the next 30 years. Nearly 500,000 first-generation CB750s, a word invented to describe it, an entire industry reshaped in its image. All from a bike Honda quietly prepared to see fail. That's the real story. Honda almost gave up on the CB750, not because they doubted the machine, but because they doubted the world was ready for it. They were wrong, and motorcycling was never the same again.